Adrian Cole entered middle age with a fortune most people would never even dare to imagine. A mansion that felt like a private world, expensive cars, investments that always turned a profit. But none of that could hide the truth that he lived almost entirely alone. No family of his own, no close friends, just employees and a few surface-level connections. When his father, Arthur Cole, passed away 3 years earlier, it was as if the last thread tying him to the warmer part of himself had been cut. After the funeral, he did the only thing he knew he was truly good at. He buried himself in work. The more he achieved, the more he believed the world ran on a single rule. People were only kind when they wanted something in return. Nothing was ever free. That doubt grew stronger, and with it, he slowly lost the ability to appreciate the people who had quietly stayed by his side all those years. Among all the people who had stayed by his side, Maria Torres was the most special. She had been the family's cleaning lady for more than 30 years. When Adrian was little, she was the one who carried him when he cried, the one who made his milk every night, the one who reminded him to wear a warm coat on cold winter days. She watched him go from clumsy to stubborn, then slowly become tougher and more closed off as the years went by. Maria knew the weaknesses Adrian tried to hide under his shiny success, and even though he grew more distant from everyone, she never stopped caring about him the way she did when he was a skinny little boy running around the backyard. But 2 months ago, Maria suddenly asked to leave so she could return home to take care of her seriously ill mother. Adrian did not say it out loud, but he felt a pang of emptiness. She left him an old wooden box tied with a small string. No explanation. "Keep this for me. Open it when it feels right." That was all Maria said before she left. Adrian put the box in a drawer and did not think about it again. He was busy, and a gift from the cleaning lady was not something he planned to spend time thinking about, until that night. A workday that dragged on for more than 10 hours left him collapsed in the chair in his office. The desk lamp cast light over stacks of unsigned documents. Adrian fell asleep without realizing it. When the dream came, everything was so clear, it made him shiver. He was standing in the long hallway that led to the bedroom. At the end of it, his father was standing there in the old ash-gray suit Arthur used to wear on Sundays. His face was gentle, but his eyes were sad, as if carrying something he could not say. Arthur looked straight at Adrian. His voice was clear and steady. "Son, do not hold on to the gift from the cleaning lady." The words struck Adrian's mind like a bell. It was not an echo. It was not the blurry sound of a heavy sleep. It was his father's voice, real. Warm, low, and filled with the concern Adrian had not felt in years. He jolted awake. His heart was pounding so hard he had to brace his hands on the desk just to breathe. Cold sweat ran down his back. What chilled him even more was the fact that his father had never once doubted Maria when he was alive. If anything, Arthur trusted her completely. So why, in the dream, had his father spoken like a warning? Adrian turned on the lights. The soft yellow glow filled the familiar room, but the unease stayed with him, like an invisible hand pressing lightly against his chest. He looked toward the drawer where the wooden box rested. It had once meant nothing to him. Now it felt like something he could not ignore. He stood up, walked to the drawer, opened it, but did not pick up the box. He just stared at it. His mind was pulled in 2 directions. Part of him wanted to dismiss it. It was just a dream. A long, exhausting day could make anyone dream about strange things. Arthur had been gone for years. Adrian told himself not to let emotions take over. But another part of him refused to stay quiet. His father's voice had been too real. Nothing like an ordinary dream. Someone as rational as Adrian could feel the difference. And he hated admitting that for a moment he had been afraid. Afraid enough that his hands still trembled. He remembered every little gesture of his father. Arthur Cole had taught his son about kindness and about valuing people. "Money can open doors, but humanity is what keeps them open," his father used to say. Adrian would listen without caring much. He believed kindness was a luxury in a world where everyone chased their own benefit. But why did his father's warning leave him struggling for breath tonight? Adrian sat down. The room was big, but it felt like there was not enough air. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, but his father's image stayed painfully clear. 2 thoughts kept crashing against each other in his mind. Maria had always been good to him, but his father's dream could not be meaningless. He shook his head, stood up, and walked to the window. Outside, the night wind moved through the trees, making a faint sound. Normally, it would calm him, but right now it only made the uneasiness inside him grow stronger. It had been a long time since Adrian felt this way. The feeling of not being in control, the sense that something was waiting for him to uncover, even though he was not sure he had the courage to face it. Just a dream, yet it was enough to crack the cold shell he had built around himself for years. And he knew that from the moment he woke up, this would not simply end. He had to find out, even if he was not ready for whatever might come next. The next morning, even after trying to convince himself it was only a dream, Adrian still could not take his eyes off the drawer where the wooden box rested. The unease from the night before had not faded. It had only settled for a moment, then surged back stronger every time he remembered his father's voice. Finally, he opened the drawer. The old wooden box sat quietly like something familiar, yet carrying a weight that made him hesitate. The wood was worn with age, and in the top corner, a small hand-carved line of text was etched into it. For A. Adrian ran his fingers over the carved letters. A memory flickered, but he pushed it away. He never believed in memories or symbols. He was not the type to keep old things just to remember anything. But his hand stayed on the lid of the box, not opening it. Since the day Maria left the mansion, the box had stayed in that same spot. And today, for the first time, he realized he could not treat it like something meaningless anymore. When he was young, Adrian's life revolved around both his father and Maria. He vaguely remembered falling off the old swing in the backyard. It was Maria who picked him up and comforted him with a voice as soft as the breeze. He remembered the days when his father traveled for work, and Maria was the one who helped him with homework, made his milk before bed, and pulled the blanket over him when he got cold. There were nights when Adrian ate late because he was lost in a book upstairs. When he came down to the kitchen, there was always a warm plate waiting on the wooden table. Maria never talked much. She only said quietly, "You need to eat so you can grow." What Adrian remembered most was that she had never taken any money beyond her regular pay. His father had tried many times to give her a bonus, but Maria always shook her head. "I care for you like my own child. I work because I care, not because of money." Thinking about that now made Adrian's chest tighten, but he pushed the feeling aside immediately. Logic told him that warm memories had nothing to do with his father's strange dream. Logic was clear. No gift could be dangerous. It was just a small wooden box, nothing more. But the dream told him something else. His father's voice in it had been too clear, too real, with none of the fog dreams usually carried. Adrian remembered the last time he saw Maria before she left. She looked weaker than usual, but still tried to smile. Right before stepping out the door, she said, "Take care of yourself. You are more like Mr. Arthur than you think." Those words had slipped past him that day. Now they came back, leaving him uneasy in a way he did not want to admit. While he was still staring at the box, Clara Benson, the new cleaning lady, stepped into the room. She was younger than Maria, quick and energetic, but she did not have the warmth of someone who had lived with Adrian's family for half a lifetime. "Do you need me to prepare anything else, sir?" Clara asked, but her eyes landed on the box. "Oh, that box. Who gave that to you?" Adrian immediately closed the drawer. "It is nothing important." His voice came out a bit too sharp, making Clara flinch before she lowered her head and left the room. When the door closed, Adrian felt irritated with himself. He had avoided a simple question. It was just a box. So why was he hiding it? The discomfort pushed him to sit down and place the box on the desk. After a long moment of hesitation, he pulled the thin string wrapped around it and opened the lid. He expected, or at least braced himself for something meaningful. A note, a card, a long letter explaining everything. But inside the box were only 4 small items. A wooden pen with a broken barrel, a piece of old white cloth that had turned yellow, a faded photograph with worn edges, and a sealed envelope closed with red wax. Adrian looked at each item. None of them had any material value. None of them showed even the slightest hint of danger someone might worry about. They were all small, old, and didn't seem important at all. He frowned and set the pen on the desk, feeling both confused and annoyed. Why would she give me these things? The words slipped out like a complaint to the empty room. Annoyance turned into tangled emotion. He could not tell if he was angry at Maria for leaving such a strange gift, or angry at himself for letting a small box shake him for 2 whole days. He put the box back into the drawer, but throughout the entire morning and afternoon, every time he looked at his desk, the image of the box came back to him. Sometimes it was the broken wooden pen, sometimes the faded photograph, sometimes the unopened envelope. And every time it appeared, his father's voice echoed like a quiet reminder. Do not hold on to the gift from the cleaning lady. Adrian knew his father was not someone who said meaningless things. That made the uneasiness inside him grow sharper. It was not fear. It was the sense that his father wanted him to understand something not necessarily tied to danger, but maybe to a kind of pain he had never known. He closed his eyes, but the image of the box stayed front and center in his mind, refusing to leave. And Adrian knew this pull would not disappear until he found the answer behind every item inside that old wooden box. All day, the box hovered in his thoughts like a question that refused to be ignored. By nightfall, when the house was quiet, he took it out again. This time, instead of glancing at the items, he picked each one up to examine it closely. And the old photograph was the one he held the longest. The picture had faded with time, its edges slightly curled. Under the desk lamp, the image became clearer. Maria standing in the backyard of the old house where Adrian had spent his childhood. Next to her was a little girl around 7 or 8, her long hair neatly tied, her eyes bright but holding something hard to name. Adrian stared at the photo so long he forgot to breathe. He had lived in that house for decades, yet he had no memory at all of this little girl. But what caught his attention even more was her face. The shape of her mouth, her eyes, even the way she stood. Everything looked strangely similar to Maria. Like seeing a smaller version of her. Who was this girl? And why had Maria kept the photo in the box, only to give it to him? The question kept Adrian awake all night. The next morning, he decided to bring the photo to Mr. Lowell, the man who had worked with his father for many years. Lowell was retired now, but he still understood the Cole family better than anyone alive. When Adrian showed him the picture, Lowell studied it for a long time. His wrinkled face tightened, as if he was answering himself rather than Adrian. The silence stretched on, making Adrian even more tense. Finally, Lowell let out a long breath. Your father wanted to tell you about this, he said slowly, but he thought you already had too much pressure and didn't want to place more weight on your shoulders. Adrian gripped the photo harder. Tell me what? What is this about? Lowell leaned back in his chair. He looked at Adrian with an expression caught between sympathy and the weight of a truth he had no choice but to reveal. Maria once had a daughter. The girl in the photo is her child. Adrian's heart stalled for a beat. Lowell went on. Back then, Maria's family was very poor. The girl was seriously ill. It was a condition that needed long-term and expensive treatment. Maria was exhausted, working while caring for her daughter and struggling to make enough money. Your father found out and helped quietly. Arthur took them to the hospital, paid the bills, bought the medicine, handled everything Maria could not handle on her own. A tightness spread through Adrian's chest. His father had never mentioned any of this. Lowell paused before continuing. But no matter how hard they tried, they could not save her. The girl passed away when she was only 8. Maria was devastated, but she never blamed life, never blamed anyone. She just hid the pain and kept working, caring for you like she always had. The room fell silent. Adrian looked at the photo again. The girl was smiling, a gentle, well-mannered smile. He felt a twist in his chest knowing he had never heard any of this. Maria had been by his side, caring for him every day. Yet he had no idea she had lived through such crushing grief. Lowell glanced at the broken wooden pen and the piece of cloth that had been inside the box. That pen, he said, I believe you gave it to Maria when you were little. You told her it was for her daughter to share. Remember? Adrian did not remember, but hearing it made his heart sink. He had once given Maria a simple toy, but to her it had been something that brought her child joy more than once. And now it lay broken in the box like a piece of a closed memory. Lowell picked up the cloth. And this cloth, Maria used it to wipe her tears when the girl passed. She kept it as part of her last memory. Adrian felt his whole body go cold. All those years, he had thought of Maria as nothing more than a loyal cleaning lady, but now he understood she had seen him as a son. She had lost a child, and she had poured all her love into him. And his father? His father had helped Maria through the worst pain of her life, without ever mentioning it once. Adrian picked up the sealed envelope. His hands trembled slightly as he broke the red wax. Inside was a handwritten letter from Maria. Her handwriting was not pretty. A little shaky, but every line felt like it touched the deepest part of him. Maria wrote that she left not only because her mother was sick, but because she wanted Adrian to learn to live with his own emotions instead of hiding in work. She thanked Arthur for saving her from the darkest moment of her life. She thanked Adrian for being the child who once brought joy to her daughter. "This gift," Maria wrote, "is only pieces of memory. I want you to keep them so you remember that you were loved with a full heart. Do not let life push you away from that feeling." Adrian reached the end of the letter, and his vision blurred. Tears fell, something he had not felt in more than 20 years. Now he understood why his father had appeared in the dream. His father did not want him to throw the box away. He wanted Adrian to stop treating it like an empty object and open it to understand its meaning. All his life, Adrian had trusted only work, numbers, results. He had never learned to value the feelings of others. He had never realized he had been loved in a way no amount of money could ever buy. For the first time, Adrian understood that the lesson his father wanted to teach him was not about money, but about the heart. Maria's words lingered in Adrian's mind for hours. The emotions sat on his chest like a stone. He closed the letter and placed it back inside the wooden box, but he could not stop thinking about her. Those small pieces of memory did more than tell Maria's past. They pointed straight at something he had avoided for years. He had kept his heart shut for far too long. And now the urge to see Maria was clear, stronger than any logic he could try to tell himself. The very next morning, Adrian called her old number. The phone rang for a long time, then stopped. He called again, but no one answered. The number was no longer in service. Adrian walked into the living room with the wooden box in his hand. Clara saw him and hesitated before saying, "Maria moved to a pretty remote countryside area, sir. I don't know exactly where. She only mentioned going back to her hometown to take care of a relative." Adrian nodded, but inside, one thought rose like a voice he could not ignore. "I need to find her." It was not a decision made out of responsibility or politeness. It came from something deeper. Maybe gratitude, maybe regret. But more than anything, Adrian felt this was what his father would have wanted him to do. And for the first time in years, he set his work aside. He turned off his business phone, emailed his assistant to say he would be gone for a few days, and offered no explanation. He got in his car and drove toward the town Clara had mentioned. The road was long and quiet, stretching past green fields and small wooden houses scattered here and there. The late afternoon sun cast a soft golden light that made everything feel strangely peaceful. The feeling caught Adrian off guard. He could not remember the last time he looked out a car window and actually felt calm. His days were usually packed with schedules, meetings, deals waiting for a signature. But here, everything moved slowly, gently, and honestly. The town where Maria lived was small. Dirt roads, rows of trees on both sides, and old houses sitting close together like longtime neighbors. Adrian stopped in front of the house he had been directed to. The door opened softly when he knocked. A middle-aged woman stepped out, her hair streaked with gray and her eyes warm. "I'm Elena," she said. "Maria's neighbor. You are Adrian, right?" Adrian was a little surprised. "You recognize me?" Elena smiled. "Maria always talked about you. She thought of you as family all these years." The words made Adrian freeze for a moment. "Is she well?" Elena slowly shook her head. "Maria is in the hospital. Her heart condition got worse a few weeks ago. She didn't tell you because she didn't want to bother you." Adrian felt something drop inside his chest. He clenched his hands, a rush of worry hitting him out of nowhere. "Can you show me the way to the hospital?" Elena nodded and gave him clear directions, trying to reassure him with a gentle smile. But Adrian barely heard her. His mind was already ahead of him, racing toward where Maria was lying. When Adrian walked into the hospital room, he saw Maria lying on the bed, her body much thinner than the last time he saw her. But her eyes were still gentle, still the same eyes that had watched over him throughout his childhood. Maria opened her eyes, and when she realized it was him, she whispered, her voice weak but full of surprise, "You really came?" Adrian could not speak right away. He pulled a chair over to her bedside and sat down. "I'm sorry, Maria." He lowered his head. "I ignored you for far too long." Maria looked at him and gave a faint smile. "You're still the same boy you used to be. You just forgot how good you once were." Her breathing slowed, and Adrian could see the exhaustion in every small movement. But Maria kept talking, as if this was the moment she needed to finally say everything she had kept inside for so many years. "Your father. She paused to catch her breath. He saved me from the darkest place after losing my daughter. Without him, I don't know if I could have made it through. You are so much like him, Adrian. The words tightened something deep in Adrian's chest. Mr. Arthur always believed in you. He said your heart was good, that life had only hardened it. I gave you that box to remind you of the part of yourself you were losing. Maria let out a small smile, weak but warmer than any gift could be. Mr. Arthur is probably happy you finally opened it. Adrian sat there, afraid to even blink. Every word Maria spoke felt like a layer of dust being wiped off his memories, revealing the truth about the person he once was and the person he could still become. And in that moment, he felt something he had not allowed himself to feel in years. An awakening. He understood that his father had not wanted him to hold on to the box in a literal sense. What his father wanted was for him to open his heart, to see the affection he had once received but never truly valued. Maria had not given him a few old objects. She had given him a piece of memory, a piece of the love she had for her daughter and for him. Adrian held Maria's hand, and for the first time in years, he did not feel alone. But mixed with that warmth was regret. For so many years he had lived carelessly, distant, unaware that someone had quietly cared for him with a genuine heart. He realized he had let his own heart sleep for far too long, and it was Maria, along with the memory of his father, who finally helped him awaken the part of himself he thought he had lost forever. Back at the hotel after visiting Maria, Adrian could still hear her voice in his mind. Every word she said touched the deepest part of his heart, the part that had been dry and closed off for years. Thinking about her condition, he knew he could not sit still. The next morning, he returned to the hospital with a decision already set in his mind. Maria shook her head gently when she heard Adrian offer to cover all her medical bills. You don't need to do that. I will live the way life has taken me. You don't have to worry about me. Adrian sat beside her bed, his voice calm but firm in the softest way he could manage. This is what my father would have wanted. If he were alive, he would have done this long ago. Maria looked into his eyes. That sentence made her fall quiet for a few seconds. Then she let out a slow breath and squeezed his hand lightly. If it is Arthur's wish, I will not refuse. But promise me one thing. No showing off, no letting people talk. I don't want this to become something that makes others misunderstand you. Adrian nodded right away. I promise. That promise came from sincerity, not responsibility or repayment. It came from a warmth he had not felt in a very long time. When Adrian returned to the city, he realized he walked into his home with a different mindset. The heaviness in his chest was gone, replaced by a calm he had never found through money or achievements. Every step into his office, every handshake with his staff felt lighter, more at ease. In the days that followed, the change in him became unmistakable. He no longer snapped when things fell behind schedule. He listened to his employees more. In some meetings, he let everyone speak first before giving his thoughts. Many people looked confused because they had never seen Adrian like this. Quietly, he set up a small fund to provide scholarships for underprivileged kids at a public school near the office. No one knew who the donor was. It was exactly the way Arthur used to do things. And even though Adrian never said it out loud, each time he signed off on a donation, he felt a little lighter inside. It was as if every small act filled a corner of the emptiness he had been avoiding for years. Clara noticed the change in Adrian too. She rarely saw him tense or irritable like before. He asked how she was doing, whether the work was too much, even whether she was staying too late. Clara was so surprised that she often froze for a few seconds, unsure how to respond. In his office, the wooden box sat in a place of honor on the bookshelf, where he could see it every morning. Not because it held any material value, but because it reminded him of something he had forgotten for years. Kindness had always been there. He just never paid attention to it. Every time he looked at the box, Adrian heard his father's voice in his memory. The richest you can ever be is when you still keep your humanity. That sentence became his new compass in life. In the days that followed, Adrian tried to reconnect with people he had unintentionally hurt. He went to see the young employee he had scolded harshly months earlier over a flawed report. That day, Adrian stood in front of the young man's desk and spoke clearly, but with sincerity. I was too harsh that time. I'm sorry. The young employee's face looked like he could not believe what he had just heard. But that apology made Adrian feel lighter than any successful deal he had ever made. He also visited Mr. Lowell to thank him for telling him everything. "I understand what my father wanted now," Adrian said, his voice carrying more gratitude than the words themselves. Lowell simply smiled and patted Adrian's shoulder the way a father would treat a grown son. One night, when the city was wrapped in a rare quiet, Adrian dreamed of his father again. But this time there was no warning, no tension, only the image of Arthur standing by the old wooden fence, wearing the gentle smile Adrian had missed for so many years. "You understand the gift now," his father said, his voice soft like a passing breeze. Adrian woke up, no shock, no fear, just a calm spreading through his chest as if a long-closed door had finally opened again, and for the first time in many years, he felt at peace. A few weeks later, when everything at the company had settled and Adrian's life had found a new, gentle rhythm, he decided to return to the small town where Maria lived. The sky that day was clear and soft, carrying the feeling of a quiet new beginning. Adrian brought a special gift with him. A custom wooden frame he had ordered to hold the photo of the little girl from the wooden box. When he stepped into the hospital room, he saw that Maria looked better. Her face was still tired, but her eyes were much brighter. When Adrian handed her the framed photo, Maria reached out with trembling hands to take it. "This is my little girl." Her voice broke. The moment she saw the photo resting neatly inside the new frame, tears spilled down her cheeks. Not the tears of old pain, but the tears of gratitude, because that memory had finally been honored instead of forgotten. "You kept it so beautifully," Maria said. "She would be so happy." Adrian only smiled. He felt warmth spreading through his chest, a feeling he used to know long ago but had lost when his father passed away. Today it returned in the simplest way, by giving someone genuine appreciation. The two of them talked for a long time. No heavy words, no awkward silence. Just the gentle calm of two people who finally understood each other completely. Maria looked at Adrian with the same kind eyes she had had all those years. "You were never a cold person," she said. "You just forgot how good you used to be. Work and life made you forget." Adrian held her hand. "You and my father helped me remember. I owe both of you more than I ever realized." Maria smiled. It was the smile of a mother looking at a child who had finally grown in the truest sense. In that moment, in that small room, Adrian felt a peace he had spent half his life searching for. When he stood to leave, Adrian suddenly remembered the first dream. His father's words became clearer than ever. "Do not hold on to the gift from the cleaning lady." It had never been a warning of danger. It had never been a command to throw it away. It was a reminder, do not keep the gift as an empty object. Open it and understand the love hidden inside. Maria gave him the box to remind him that he had once been a child who knew how to love, and that the hardened years could not erase that goodness in him. His father appeared in the dream to push him, to open his heart, to help him see the precious thing he had forgotten. From that day on, Adrian lived a different life. No more rushing. No more letting pressure drown out every emotion. He cared about people more, not for anything grand, but because he truly wanted to treat those around him with kindness. He helped those in need without the old fear of being taken advantage of. He learned to smile when someone needed comfort, and above all, he learned to appreciate the small things he once took for granted. There were nights when Adrian sat watching the city lights, whispering to himself, "People become truly rich when they learn to appreciate those who once loved them in silence." It was not a line meant to hang on a wall. It was a real truth, earned through years he had lived without warmth, a warmth he had finally found again. One afternoon, Adrian visited Maria once more. Sunset stretched across the rooftops, covering the small town in a soft golden glow. Adrian stood in front of her little house, with its simple flower pots and the old wooden chair where she used to sit and read. He took a long breath. The sunlight behind him felt like an embrace. In that quiet moment, Adrian felt as if his father were smiling somewhere close. A gentle warmth moved down his spine, like a blessing from the man who had guided him back to kindness. And for the first time in many years, Adrian understood clearly what it meant to be rich at heart.